We're back with the Costello Coaching Podcast. I'm Tommy Costello with my co-host, Andrew Rohrbach. Andrew, we shared a great meal about 3 weeks ago, and it brought up a lot of good thoughts for me. And driving home, I turned on our last recorded podcast together, and that was November 24th. It's currently April, and man, I noticed that we've grown a lot in the past 6 months. And you asked a question at that dinner to our friend Kyle, and you asked him, you said, where have you seen the most growth in yourself in the last 6 months? So that's where I want to start this one. Where have you seen the most growth in the last 6 months for yourself?
Wow. Good question.
Yeah, smart guy asked it.
Where have I seen the most growth in myself in the last 6 months? Well, we were talking at dinner. I think I was expressing to you that I've been taking on a lot more. I think I've grown a lot in knowing which direction I want my life to go. That I was kind of stuck on that, which I think people that listen to the podcast can probably relate to, is where am I going and what am I doing and why am I doing all these things? And I've had a lot of clarity the last 6 months. I've been going back to school, getting my master's in sports psychology. I think we've talked about that in the past. It's been incredible to be in a relationship with people that care about the same things that I do, which is something I was desperately needing in life. I always talked about it, but I wasn't 100% sure how to find it. But I jumped into something. I think I take on a lot right now, and I feel like I've grown in time management, but also just who I want to spend my time with and why that's important to me.
So who is it that you spend more time with?
I spend a lot more time with my girlfriend, my family, and I definitely spend a lot more time with my classmates. And I spend a lot more time with high-level athletes, people that think very similar to me, want to achieve a lot in their lives and believe in themselves, and then also are not afraid to say that they don't believe in themselves at times. I just want to be around people who are passionate about what they want to do, but at the same time are not afraid to say, I'm not okay at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Okay. So people that are ultra self-aware, but also have high expectations for themselves.
Yeah.
And that are going after it. And is that your ideal person that you want to help?
Yeah. I want to help those people because I am one of those people.
Mm-hmm. I had someone help me creating, always creating plans, always adapting the plans, always trying to figure out not necessarily what's next, but just seeing what I want for the future. And I was struggling creating this last business plan on a project that I'm working on, saying, what do you want your role to be? And for me, kind of working on my own and then having guys helping me and doing all of that, I've taken on a lot of roles, and I've taken on a lot over the past 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And I've always taken a lot on for myself. So clearly establishing what role I wanted in a company was a really good exercise for me. And what that helped me realize was the zone I wanted to live in, meaning the way in which I wanted to serve others, and intentionally or unintentionally taking 4 or 5 months off of podcasting and going back and listening to where it was at. I really wanted we did about 50 episodes, and I take a little bit of a break, remove yourself from it, and then really get to evaluate and do some work on yourself and figure out where you've grown, and then bring that back to the conversation. And I think for us, we are both clearly understanding what types of roles we want to live within our life, which is unique. And I think a lot of people get confused in the way in which they want to live in this world, and they end up adapting to kind of what other people have directed for them. rather than oneself directing that. And so self-proclamation or declaration on what you want to do can be like the hardest step, but I think it's the most important step in someone's life or in their career or in their season or whatever. And clearly establishing what you want for yourself is a process that takes time, due diligence, experience, and really a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's incredible, by the way, that you've gotten an opportunity to be in that space and find different roles for yourself.
Yeah.
But I do want to take it back a second. What did that process essentially look like for you? And I think where I'm kind of gearing this question.
Which one? Establishing my role?
Yeah, well, you're talking about you took some time off.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on time off?
Yeah, so time off for me was time off from training a high volume of people. So just to kind of catch the listeners up, through December, January, and the early parts of February, I was spending about 3 days a week in Arizona training high-level professionals. I would fly in Wednesday morning, land at 9:15 in the morning, and then I would take the rental car up to the facility. We'd get there around 9:45, 9:50. First training session started at 10 a.m. I would roll training sessions until about 2:30, 3 o'clock. Some were small groups of 4 to 5. Some were bigger groups of 7 to 10. And then some one-on-one sessions with these really high-level baseball players. During that process, I got time to myself. It kind of removed me from my business indirectly. Yeah, I was working in my business, but I wasn't working on it as much because I was so involved with such high-level people where I needed to really, really be focused on that work. And so I saw some declines in my business and the things that I was growing at home. But I got to learn a lot about myself and like pros and the way that pros work. So that was productive. But then once that finished, I really have dedicated my time to pretty much 2, 3, maybe 4 athletes, but really 2 guys, and pushing them through kind of this first finish line for them being the draft. And that's been really, really good work for me. A little, I don't want to call it stressful, but you just feel what they're going through and you really want to be there to support them. And it's so tricky because it's so physical. Like there's so much about it that's physical. You just want them to be healthy and you want them to be safe. But then the mental side of it is just a whole nother ball game. And that's really been my life the past 6 months.
Well, dude, that's pretty great to hear you say that.
What?
Well, just because the Tommy that I first met, and this is not shaming or guilting that Tommy, but I felt like you were afraid to step away from work. Mm-hmm. And it seems like you just made other choices, like other things came up in you that you were very interested in and curious, and you gave yourself permission to go and see those things out. And taking time away from business at home was maybe something more difficult for you a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. You're really focused on building that, but by you stepping away and trying other avenues brought some curiosity to you and maybe a new direction of where you want to go. I just wanted to hit on that because I think that's something I really struggle with. And I think a lot of people struggle with is that concept of if I'm just working hard and I'm going this direction, I just have to be singularly focused on the end goal.
Yeah.
And there's so many different like roadmaps to get to that end goal. And part of it, I think for me is like, if I'm curious about something, my body's telling me, hey, I kind of want to explore what that is. And all I'm trying to say is for me, I've learned the hard way that if I ignore those signals, I'm kind of like ignoring myself. And when I do that, I'm not actually going in the direction that my body wants me to go, my head, my heart, whatever you want to call it, my brain wants me to go. And I think that's pretty awesome that you did that. It seems like you have a different outlook on who you want to be with, where you want to go, and you gave yourself permission for that. So
thanks. And I think that when you're talking about direction, I was talking with my brother a few weeks back, and to give some context, senior college baseball player, freshman All-American, all-conference sophomore, Cape Cod.
Let's go, Jack.
National player of the week his junior year, breaks his hand 10 weeks before the draft and then is a senior, and he's doing really well. But you know, when you're a senior in college, the cards are stacked against you in terms of getting drafted. And so there's this external validation of being drafted. It's in the near future, but it's so far outside of yourself. You have to do so much during the season. The advisement and the advisors around him have kind of said, hey, you know, it looks like you're going to have to hit 15 homers and hit 350. And these are absurd stats. And he's proven himself 3 years in a row. And then you have to do this, and then you might get a chance. And what was kind of happening to him was, I don't think he was feeling the pressure by any means of it. But my brother is the type of guy where some people, it takes 10-hour-long phone calls to work through a process like this. For him, what I think is so incredible about him is when it comes to like the mental process, it takes him 10 minutes of a real serious conversation, which is unique. And I got on the phone with him, and the advice that I gave him, back to your point about being singularly focused, was I said, Jack, do not think that your external circumstance, meaning the draft or what scouts think of you, determines your value. You're an incredible baseball player. You've always been an incredible baseball player. If you were Cape Cod, All-American, All-Conference, and all those things were highlighted on you, and it made you feel like you were a better baseball player, you're better than you were when you were those things. Because you've stacked thousands of more hours into your craft. You're so much more mature. You're a great leader amongst your peers. You're doing all these things great. Don't let, you know, someone say that it's going to be tough for you to get drafted, and oh my God, I'm 20 points under the average that I need to be hitting, and I'm not on track for the home runs that I need to hit. Determine your value. And so how that works in multiple walks of life is, if you're not where you're at or where you want to be yet in terms of the validation from others, it does not deter your value. And I think a lot of times people think that their value is based off what others think of them rather than what's burning inside of them. And so getting people connected back to that is how you can illuminate that energy to the world, and it will return back to you. And so when you feel like you're less than, you will get less than. And if you feel like you're more than, you will get more than. So it can sound a little foo-foo, but for him being such a hard-nosed, disciplined, hardworking ball player, you know, he got it. And he's like, thanks. Like, I get it. Got it. Okay, I'm good. And it was a 10-minute conversation. And just reminding him that he is that ball player, even though your outside circumstance says that it's going to be so hard to achieve that external validation of being a pro, you are still a great baseball player.
Yeah, that's really good. I was thinking about that when you were just talking about it. I was thinking when I was playing at Long Beach, I just felt the best performances I ever gave was when I realized I was more than just the athlete that was performing that day. That sounds foo-foo-y, but I was really genuinely out there having thoughts of like, what am I going to have for dinner after this game?
Yeah.
I was in this weird zone where I wasn't just valuing myself as an athlete. I knew my value as an athlete, but my whole identity wasn't encompassed with that. That's when I started performing really well. And I've been doing a lot of research on athlete identity. And the interesting thing about it is I've read probably 50 research articles. Athlete identity, which is just you saying percentage wise, how much of Tommy is an athlete. Some people relate to 100% of themselves is they identify with being that athlete. So when when athletics don't work out or they don't do well in a game, their whole shame and guilt comes with it. But it's like you haven't developed anything else other than that. And it's really sad too, is a lot of the research says that it's developed when we're kids. We get a lot of external validation of who we are as a person based off of how we perform, especially if we're really good at athletics. Parents, external coaches, whoever, trainers go, hey, you are an amazing baseball player. You're so good. A 5-6-year-old, 7-8-year-old kid goes, that's who I am. And it's really hard to take that away from them as they continue, especially if they keep getting better and better and better. It's not until athletics ends that they go, wait, what am I supposed to do? Like, my only value is an athlete, right? And a lot of the research suggests, which is contrary to what a lot of people think, is that to be a better athlete, you have to be singularly focused. You are an athlete, and that's who you are, and that's your identity, and that's your value in this world. But research suggests that people perform better, athletes perform much better if they don't put as much value on them being an athlete. I don't know what the percentage is, but having other identities other than being an athlete, which is what you were saying to Jack, right? It's like, hey, don't let other people and the metrics and 15 home runs and 350, if you don't hit them, it doesn't mean you weren't good enough to be drafted. Essentially is what you're trying to give him permission, and that's going to take a lot of the stress down from him so that he's able to stay in the present and perform how he knows how to do that.
What % of an athlete would you identify yourself as
currently?
I have this weird number in my head.
Yeah, that's fine. For me, probably still 50%, and I haven't played in 4 or 5 years.
Wow. Mine was 80.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I would consider myself more of an athlete than a business guy or a trainer or a coach. All those things. I would consider myself an athlete.
Yeah.
That's like I would love like a poll. We should actually do a poll. Maybe like we clip this and we do a little poll. Cool. Like what % of you, if you were an athlete or are an athlete or, have played in the past, feels that you are one?
Well, let me ask you this question. When did you start performing? When you were performing really well at sport, how much of your percentage of an athlete were you?
100%.
100% is when you performed the best.
No, the things that I related to, I remember like pitching. I think it might have been against Air Force. It was a really good outing. It might have been 8 innings, 12K. It was like one of the highlighted like Division I outings of the week. And I remember specifically in that outing, walking around the mound after I caught one, like wondering like, am I out of toothpaste at home? Like, do I have enough toothpaste? Like, do I need to get toothpaste after this game? Like to brush my teeth tonight? I was thinking about that. I remember specifically thinking about like pepperoni pizza. Like if we were going to have like Little Caesars in the locker room after this Tuesday game and how much that would suck, hot and sweaties. And so I just remember like those moments where I was so in flow that I was almost unconscious in a way. And that might be the wrong term for my medical professional over here now. But that's the way I felt.
Yeah, definitely a medical professional. Almost 1 year into a master's degree. So
yeah. So you're a pro.
Call me doctor.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. But but you would say that 100% of your identity, like who you thought you were.
Yeah, I think it's why I crashed so hard.
Got it.
I definitely crashed so hard not knowing what the heck to do. And that's probably why I still think I'm 80% an athlete. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing or whatever it is. I think it's just indifferent. It's just how you feel about yourself.
Yeah. But
like, I don't know what the right or wrong is on that.
I don't think there's a right or wrong. Like, I don't think there is. I'm just trying to associate what you were trying to do with Jack, and what honestly worked with me was when I didn't associate myself completely as an athlete, even with athletics, and I had other avenues of interest. Like I loved playing piano at one point in my life, and so music was something that was really interesting for me. And then I was also taking courses on sports psychology, and I was like, wow, I'm really interested in learning how the mind works.
Yeah.
And Ken Ravizza came to Long Beach State and started giving like mental performance talks, and it was like, oh my gosh, man, that like blew my mind. I was like, wow, slowing the game down and thinking about my breath, how that clears my mind. And when I have a clear mind, then I'm all of a sudden performing better. And then my interests are, yeah, I can lock it in when I got to lock it in. But as soon as that pitch is over and that play is over, my interest can go somewhere else, and I can take a deep breath, analyze if I want to analyze. It just allowed me to be a lot more centered.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As you're on the coaching side and mentoring side now with athletes, as you're talking about that, and I'm visualizing a younger Andrew listening to Ken Ravizza and thinking about breathing, slowing the game down, all these concepts that if you and me talked about them now, they'd seem so elementary. We would keep scrolling if we saw that on Instagram now, or, if we saw an article about it, we wouldn't really read it because it'd be like, yeah, of course. It's obvious. Do you feel like you tend not to share these elementary concepts with athletes because you assume that they already know? I think I have a tendency to do that, which you work with a professional, you assume that they know these things and you don't want to sound unintelligent when you're talking to them because you're sharing such an elementary concept with them. But how do you approach that in this space? Because you're getting so deep into the weeds of mental performance, writing your thesis, having so many articles and all the work that you've been doing with this. How do you, because complex topics for you can probably seem elementary now to yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe an athlete's never been introduced to it. So how do you approach that?
Yeah. I tend to think of it. I was very curious at the time that this stuff was happening. I was like, overload, give me more information. So I was at Long Beach and Ken was walking in there with these concepts that were probably very elementary to him. They weren't to me, but I was in like that right frame of mindset to have them. So
in a mindset yearning for it?
Yearning for learning. I was in a give me all the information because I've now found something that I really am interested in, and that's performing really well. I want to know everything about that. Now, if I'm coaching an athlete, I can kind of tell if someone's in that frame of mindset or not in that frame of mindset. If they are in that frame of mindset, then I go step one and I try to think of the most basic way I could possibly explain things. I also look for the right moments with that. So for example, I'm not going to just overload someone with a bunch of information on mechanical cues as well as mental cues. So when I coach someone on this, I try to find the right time. And if I'm listening better, then I have an opportunity to understand when they need it. Most of the time, I coach this when a kid is frustrated, when they are beating themselves up mentally, and they are clearly their own worst enemy. I go, all right, here we go. Let's take a second. Let's take a deep breath. Just nothing against performance, nothing with performance. I just go, let's take a deep breath here. All right, shoulders up. Let's go a couple seconds in your nose. Hold it for me for a couple seconds, and then exhale for a couple seconds, and let's hold it at the very end and just get a couple deep breaths in here. So they don't know what's happening, but I just did a box breathing session with them to get their heart rate down, be aware of their breath. And I try to trickle that, and then I start thinking about, all right, hey, you can also do this whenever you want to when you're pitching or performing. There's opportunities to slow yourself down. Remember that box breathing we had? So I just kind of go step 1 to step 2 to step 3. But if someone's not interested or they don't appear to be in that learning frame of mindset and wanting a lot of information, I know athletics comes with the highs and lows. So I know there's going to be opportunity in those lows to be like, hey, here's what I want. And I have a checklist in my head of when we get into a low period, this is what I want to talk about. And normally for me, it's breath first, just because I need people to be aware of their breath, because then they're aware of some sort of internal process that's happening within themselves. And I think that's for me, that's the first step, because being aware of your thoughts and what you're thinking, some kids don't know yet. They're not aware that they're negative self-talking themselves.
What do you know about frontal lobe, amygdala development, 13 to 25? Have you gotten into any of that?
Not too much.
Not too much brain science?
I think you know more about the brain science than I do at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's just interesting to me. How young are you doing this? These conversations? Is this going college, high school?
Like 8 or 9 year old kids.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I have one kid give lessons to. I've been working on this for a couple of years. We're talking about red light, green light, yellow lights when he's aware of the game. And I just got a text from his dad saying that he was very aware when he was in a red light and when his brain was freaking out and the situation was too crazy for him. And then he had tools that we've been talking about for a couple of years.
Wow.
It was an electric text message to get. And the dad seemed very fired up about it. Mm-hmm. Because I just think that's going to level them up in so many different areas, not just life or not just sport, but life in general too.
Yeah, being aware of what your red light, green light is.
Yeah,
in life.
Right.
do you question, you talked about it maybe 10, 15 minutes ago with kids' identity being singularly focused, 100% athlete identity. Where is this coming from? External validation. I think of parents. I think of Instagram. I think peers, amongst your peers, who you're seen as. Now, what kind of observations have you taken on this in terms of maybe observations or coaching you could provide so that people aren't, creating this situation for themselves indirectly? Where basically what I'm asking you is, if you have a kid, if you're a parent and you're listening to this and you have a kid and you're worried that he is 100% athlete identity, and then if those athletics go away, what happens to this kid? What kind of advice do you offer to that situation?
Well, I mean, if I'm a parent and I'm aware, I would honestly, if I was a parent and I was aware that my kid was really associating only athletics with their identity, I'd probably check in with myself to see if I'm providing any of that, feedback for them. Most of the time I find myself in that situation. I don't have any kids, but even when I'm thinking about like coaching somebody, am I putting a lot of my own thought and feelings and my emotions and what I want the kid to do onto him? He's going to feel that. She's going to feel that, whoever it is. So checking in with me first on if I'm providing any of that external validation that's going to reinforce that the kid only has value if they're an athlete or performing well. So I'd first do that. And then honestly, if I'm a parent, making sure that I'm communicating effectively that their value is not just an athlete and what they do well in school, or if they're interested in learning about something, or they come home from school and they want to talk about geometry and they're so happy that they did that, like putting validation in what they're curious about, because kids are curious about a lot of different things. They're going to get validation from a lot of different things, but they're going to be curious about a lot of things, and being able to facilitate other avenues for that kid where they're good at this and they're good at that, and you are curious about that. That's amazing. Put a lot of effort. Oh, it's great. And being curious with them so that you kind of reinforce learning is important and what they're curious about is important will help that kid not put so much identity on, oh, the only time I feel really good from a parent or a coach or someone else is when I hit a home run or score a touchdown or kick a goal. Like, people feel that, kids feel that. You got to be just kind of aware of it. That's how I would probably coach it, is give them other avenues of success, and what they're curious about is important, and be there with them with the curiosity.
Yeah. So there's attainable almost goals in multiple aspects of life.
Yeah.
So that your identity doesn't become singularly focused.
For sure. Yeah.
Steven talks about this with me he calls it parents hijacking the experience, where it's very easy for a parent or a coach or a person of authority to hijack the experience, and allowing the individual to, and hijack kind of has a negative connotation. So I don't want it to be purely negative, but you can positively hijack a situation. If your kid's in a bad spot, you can hijack it. Maybe you go bully the coach and force him to move from last in the lineup to the first in the lineup, and you're hijacking. You think it's helping that kid. Reality is it's not helping him, or you can hijack the experience and force the kid to go practice more and work more and train more so that, he performs better, and then he's validated or she's validated after they start performing better because of the repetitions and the practice. But if it's not self-started, if it's not coming from within, you got to be really careful, because as a person of authority, as a coach or as a parent, I'm sure you want to provide the structures and the disciplines to show that this is the way in which you improve in something, because that is so important. That's so important in the learning process. And that's why you have coaches and parents, is a supportive experience. But when it shifts from being supportive to hijacking, you have to be aware of that as the person in authority.
Yeah. I also think I want to add on that is when they fail or don't succeed?
What's the conversation?
What's the conversation? How do you communicate? And
so that's what we experienced in Arizona when I didn't touch on this, but the work with the travel ball team. And
that's right.
And the inspiration for the Big Bear trip, like that was it. This conversation right here was exactly it. And I would love to talk about that, now that I think about it, but with youth athletes, I coach a travel ball team with a couple of my buddies, and it's really an experiment in a way. Yes, I love coaching these kids. I love connecting with that age. I think 6th, 7th, 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade is such an amazing time in someone's life because they're starting to become closer to an adult. They're still so kid, like their brain is in so many different stages of development. Their body is going through so many changes. They're beginning to grab an identity with who they are and what they want to be. And so they're so malleable. And that's a really, really cool spot to be because you have a large influence. And now with a large influence takes a lot of precaution and knowing that you have a large influence. And every single time I talk to these kids, I always ask myself first, what do these guys need to hear? And then I talk. What do they need to hear? Because they are so susceptible, high or low. And so we're in Arizona and we're winning. We create a really good team in December. We hold a tryout. We get about 40 kids out to the tryout. We take the 14 best players. We get the team sponsored by Easton. They also swing Hype Fires. They're legit. We practice. I explain to the families that you need to maintain a 70% compliance on the app. The training is the highest priority in order to stay on the team. We're going to manage pitch counts. We're going to do all these things that are health focused. But one of the major components that we're going to talk about is the mental performance without them knowing that we're talking about mental performance. We're just going to kind of put the guide rails up and make sure that these kids are being supported in the way they need to be supported. So we go to Arizona and the kids are performing well on the field. We're winning. We're the 1 seed out of 24 teams at a high level tournament. There's really good teams there. First time they've ever played together. We're hitting our cuts and relays. We're throwing strikes. We're getting hits. So we start out 4-0. But we go to dinner, and I'm sitting at dinner, and about 80% of the team, they're sitting on their phone. They're on their phone. Maybe they're playing video games with each other, against each other. But I'm like, where is this human connection? What's going on here? Then I got some parents ordering food for their kids. I'm like, these guys are 13 years old. What's going on? Then they go back to the hotel. These kids are running all over the hotel, ding dong ditching, doing this, acting crazy. They stay up late. We go out the next day, we play, we win an exciting game. And then we face the number 3 team from California, and we lost 7-5, but it wasn't because they were that much better than us. We ran out of energy. And so during this whole thing, while we were having success and, they were doing what they were doing away from the field, what I noticed is when they experienced challenging times within the game, it tanked them. So if it was 2 strikeouts in a game, boom, tanked, like done. If they had a couple walks on the mound, tanked, done. And they couldn't get themselves back from it. And that roller coaster of emotions, and almost baseball was being the engine to highlight that and really amplify it, is dangerous for society. And so if these people or if these humans go through their life going highs and extreme lows, that's an unsafe place to be. Now, that's what inspired the trip to Big Bear, was observing that and being present with that and not entertaining and hanging out with the families and participating in what everyone was doing, and more so just being in a place of observation and really taking notes and saying, wait, where do we most help these kids? Because the baseball thing's easy. Yeah.
Just to interject real quick, was it hard for you to bite your tongue to communicate immediately of how you felt about the situation?
More so I highlighted it like post-game. No one ever remembers a post-game talk, and I don't expect them to. But it's about setting up a consistent message, I believe, and establishing what the culture is with that consistent message. So no one's going to remember exactly what I said in one meeting. But if I'm consistently delivering the same message time and time again, it will become the culture. And I used a boy, there's a kid named Lenny on the team, and Lenny is the greatest kid. He's the most positive kid. He's a good ball player. He's just exactly who you'd want, your son to be. Like he's a great human being. We love Lenny. Like Lenny could have like size, speed, strength, all these things. And then his character numbers are like a 90 grade, and for people that don't know what that means, when you're getting drafted in the MLB, they'll put these scouting grades on you. I believe it's a 30 to 80 scale.
Yeah.
So, power 50, speed 60. Lenny, character 90 grade. He's off the charts. He's a beast. So anyways, back to the story. Lenny experiences a tough first at bat. We end up pulling him from the game, and you can do re-enters in this, and doesn't flinch, like supporting his teammates, present, no reaction. Yes, sir. No problem. And then he gets put back in the game for defensive reasons at first base, really good first baseman. And there's a kid struggling on the mound. And this player that was struggling, he was talking a big game, let's say, before he went out there, and how good he was going to do and all this stuff. And he didn't perform to his best. And so he's pitching, and Lenny, supporting him the whole time, ends up foul ball with 2 outs. And this guy, we're grinding on every out. And the coaches that were with me wanted me to pull him from the outing because he was like 25, 30 pitches into the inning. I said, no, this is a perfect opportunity. We're up 6 runs. We're going to let him learn through this moment. And he had to kind of grind it out. And so what ends up happening, Lenny scales the fence, reaches over the fence, catches the ball. We win the game. Game's over. So what was highlighted in the post-game talk was the one guy who didn't let a negative situation derail him was the one who ended up supporting the person in most need. And that was everything. That was worth going to Arizona, was establishing that.
Dude, that's gold.
And it just happens, it's just so funny how whether it's God or just life, that consistently happens. And it was a really hard play. Like Lenny shouldn't have made the play, and he made the play, and he never flinched, and he supported his teammate without even consciously thinking about, oh, this guy needs support. I need to go make a great play for him. He was present and in the moment and made a sensational play and picked someone else up when they were down. That fast forward later in the tournament, that player that struggled, we had a good talk. We sat down on the bench after the game. I said, I'm going to give you tomorrow off. You're going to have to come up clutch for us on Sunday. Put my arm around him and said, you are great. It's a small mechanical adjustment. I want you to change the way you're focused on this rather than talking so much shit to the other team. Let's internalize on what we can do better, get a little bit more internal focused than external focused. Had this really good conversation, gave him a hug, supported him, loved on him. And he ended up throwing 3-4 innings Sunday in a 3-3 ball game. And we got a walk-off later that game because of the way he pitched. And it was just like, it all happened in 3 days, and that's what sports does. It makes life experiences within hours.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing story. I think it kind of reminds me of another story that Lucas told about when you went to TO and that they knew they were going to get some work done, but that they could relate to you. I took that away from what Lucas said, and Lucas is a good guy. I mean, I know he's in close proximity to me and I have to say nice things to him, but he's a good dude. And the way he looks up to you is based off of the way that you operate your own life, but the way that you operated that team as a coach, as a mentor. And I think the way you communicated with that young kid who ended up coming out on that third day and pitching really well. The reason why I asked was it hard for you to bite your tongue? Because it's okay to have those first initial feelings of, God, he's just not doing this. And he was unfocused. And then, coaches, parents go with that feeling and they go, I just got to express. But really what you got to do is go, okay, this is happening. let me take a second. Let me figure out why this is happening and how can I communicate this in a loving, respected, and constructive rather than beating someone down with it.
Yeah.
Will allow them to start learning how to treat themselves.
If I could give any advice on that, it would be, and it's going to be an interesting, like you probably don't think that I'm thinking about it this way, but when you see a situation like this, I think what helps you bite your tongue is you got to first search for the positive observation in the situation. So what helps me bite my tongue in that situation is, okay, the positive thing is we're up 6 runs. We can allow him to experience this difficult time in a controlled atmosphere. We're not going to lose the game. If it gets really that bad or his pitch count really goes beyond, we have people who can come in and support him and finish it. Then something amazing like Lenny's catch happens, right? And we use the coaching for, he was pulled after a bad at bat, stays positive, supports his teammates, and then is the person to pull the guy out of trouble. That is the highlight of the game. And now that becomes the standard of what gets highlighted and what gets validated versus Anthony, who was dominant and probably had 4 homers in that game. You know, I'm exaggerating, but a couple doubles, a homer, and a triple. Like, this guy was an absolute beast. Yes, that gets acknowledged. Great job. You're a great player. We love you. Good job. But Lenny gets highlighted there. And so then that slowly becomes the culture of who we want to be, rather than, you know, doing what the culture does, you know, our society in terms of culture, and validates the finite success of the numerical, you know, 4 for 4 or home run or statistics.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think of, this was very missed in my childhood, you know, my parents are amazing parents. I'm not going to guilt or shame them on this podcast by any means. You know, you got your own things with your parents, but coaches, I really, really, especially in high school, really, really missed on the coaches. None of this conversation, and I don't even think any of this thought process was had by these coaches. Therefore, I was living and dying by my performance on what that coach thought of me, what didn't think of me, because there was no like relationship established. And it wasn't until I went to Long Beach State and I had my head coach, who even in the toughest of moments would give me some sort of leash to work through it. But it was established based off of a relationship that we built. Yep. That I was going to put 100% into this just as much as he's going to put 100% into this. And we can go with the ebbs and flows of that. But I knew he wasn't going to like leave me by my side. Yeah. I had that feeling. And maybe he like hit on that with me and didn't hit on it with a lot of people. You can't be perfect, but that was established. And I think that's something that's really needed amongst every person, is finding someone or having a coach or having a mentor or having a parent that give you that leash to make mistakes and to triumph and then fall again and continue to keep diminishing and shrinking that like window of tolerance to be able to do that over and over and over again. And what I mean by doing that is, how do you talk to yourself and how do you pick yourself up and how do you want to operate in the world when you're not doing well as when you're doing well? That's like a window that can be coached. And that's essentially what you're coaching, is giving these kids an opportunity to go, I'm not doing that well right now, but I know from past experiences that Coach Tommy is not going to come up there and beat me down, that I'm not doing well. I can learn through this process, and learning how to behave and to be a better person and be a better athlete with someone is an invaluable lesson that not many people hit on.
And I think what's happening too is we've established a line of communication with the players about metrics where we have a really healthy relationship with that data. So every 7 games, their data gets shot in a group message with the entire team, and it has everyone's batting average, their hits, all their numbers. And we say, hey, this is where you guys are at. You can see how the lineup is written. It's based off your performance. We're with the intention of winning. If you're not where you want to be, the numbers can change fast. If you are where you want to be, you're doing great. Good. Stay at it. And no one is shamed or blamed No one is, acknowledged more for incredible stats versus not good stats. And the idea, though, is that we can have a good communication around it. And I was kind of raised in a culture where that was like hidden from you. It's like, no, you're doing, what are you not? No, I'm hitting 380 and no. I don't have that. I have the book, like the coaches, know the stats and they don't share that with the team and don't have a reason behind their lineup. And I think what I've done with my team is clearly established like why the lineup is written the way that it is. And they respect that. And the parents respect that. And in regards to having a good relationship with your coach, I think I'm in a comfortable space with these kids and the team because the parents have been very great to me in terms of their trust in the way that and my intention behind helping their children. And so I feel that a lot of coaches could feel pressure from the outside on how they should be doing certain things, where I really don't. I have nothing but support from the parents. But the way that I've gotten that support, I believe, is number one, being consistent in what I do and what I say. But then number three, being open to communicating with them. And I think a lot of times people, or coaches specifically in youth sports and high school sports, college sports, they shut the line of communication down with the parents. And I think that's a big problem. I get it. I'm not on the phone every day with these parents. I'm not updating them about their ground balls they took at practice or anything like that. But something's going on at school. Yeah, call me. I'll talk to your son. Something's going on, here, there, whatever. I'm there for them. And I think that's allowed me to approach the strategic side of the game. And they understand at least there's probably a method to the madness here. And that if we're giving up a bunch of runs or we lose a game or I pull a kid out of the game in the championship game of this tournament, when you got that 37-cent trophy on the line, they understand that I have a reason behind that. But I've clearly articulated that to them.
Well, you also have a clear goal of what your mission is as being a coach.
Yep.
Right. But did that take like one night to understand that you wanted to do that? No, it probably took some time of like getting a new arena of how do I balance this while keep winning tournaments?
Self-reflection though.
Right.
Like what I experienced and what I needed. And that these were things that I needed in my human development that were a lot of great things were given to me in my human development. Like coaches provided this. My dad provided this. Coach Jay provided this. Coaches in my youth provided this. Even my high school coach really supported me as a leader. College, not so much. They were threatened by my leadership. I remember that leaving my exit meeting my junior year when I had come in from Yavapai. I was a Pac-12 recruit, this and that. I was going to a smaller West Coast Conference school. The coaches literally said to me in this meeting, dude, they said, hey, we're just really thankful that you didn't take over the team this fall. You could have really came in and taken over the team with your leadership. We love your presence and your work ethic, and you didn't really take it over and you're allowing it to be our team. So I really appreciate that. And I in the moment took it as a compliment. Oh, wow, these guys are acknowledging me this and that. I look at it now and I go, what the hell? They didn't want this guy to be a leader. And then fast forward through the season, what that really meant was they were going to suppress me and suppress what I was about and not fully let me live up to my potential of being a leader, and really fucked up the way that I thought about myself. I was in a really bad headspace, really bad, dangerous one that took a lot of work to get out of. And so my point is, the coaching can have a lot of influence on how that individual feels about themselves. And so it takes a lot of self-reflection as a coach to know that you have this influence. And it goes back to, what do I most need to tell them right now? What do they most need to hear right now? And then speak. Yeah.
Not so much what do I need to say right now?
No, it's not about me. Not about me at all. It's not about me in terms of income. It's not about me in terms of how good the team is. It's not about me in terms of the wins and losses. It is 100% about them and their development as a human being and how they can experience becoming a better human being through athletics. That's what this is about. And so...
Oh, it's tough. It's tough. I just want to say this. It's tough that you had to go through that experience that you went through. I mean, it seems very connected to you. It kind of triggers something in you.
Yeah.
And that's it. But I think we sometimes don't want the bad things to happen in our lives, but they are there for a specific reason, right? And you are there to go, this didn't work with me, and I have such value to bring to the world. I think it would have been facilitated this way more productively. And that comes with not letting people just go off and fly off the seat of their pants, but also holding them accountable for their actions, but also not pushing them down and not allowing them to grow as people. And I think that's what you're hitting on, is like, how can we communicate to people to give them some sort of boundaries, understand a direction that, you know, some values and goals and morals that they should have as people and who they hold themselves accountable for and who they want to be in the world, but not chaining them down with those rules and regulations. And finding that balance is really tough, and asking yourself better questions of what do they need to hear right now comparatively to what do I feel right now in my body that I need to get out because I'm angry that they didn't operate in the way that I've been talking about for months. And like, how many coaches have this conversation where they just keep doing the same thing over and over again? I don't understand. I'm not 100% sure why this keeps happening. They're just never going to learn. You're not doing the work. You're not even trying to understand why they're going through that process. And if you start to try to understand them, you get to their level. Like when I give lessons to 8-year-old kids, I'm 6'3". I'm definitely not going to stand above these kids.
No way.
And talk to them. I'm at their level, eye line, and communicating and asking them questions that I think need to be asked to them so that I can facilitate their brain process to give me the answers that are going to facilitate their growth. Yep. Right? You know, and it's little stuff like that. And
it's the common sense that's not so common.
Kind of, yeah. And I think if you do the inner work and you start understanding yourself a little bit more, that's where you're going to be able to be more for these people, you know. And you've talked about inner work a lot. We've talked about it, how important it really is. And it's not just important for your personal growth. It is important for that. That's one aspect of it. But it's also important for the people around you. It's also important for who you're trying to become and who are you trying to influence. And man, we need more of that in the world. We just do. We do, because too many people fall short of it. And maybe it's not their fault. You know, maybe they have stuff in their past that have caused them to think the way that they do, but showing some gentle kindness, love, and appreciation, even in the troubling of times and the hardships of life, is so important. You know, I had a conversation with a friend the other day who was like, man, I just got to make this money and I got to figure out how to do these things. And I just feel so locked up. I don't really understand. And I'm like, all right, let me take where he's at. He's in fear and panic and a little bit of frustration. Let me illustrate that there's another way that he likes to operate in his life. And that other way is finding some amazing things that center him. And when I did that, it seemed to go, okay, great. I do have this other value of who I am as a person. And let me take those values and then let's see if we can start trickling these back to going, these amazing parts of my life that make me feel really centered. I can find them in the tough things. And I don't have to operate in fear so much because I can value, you know, rest, and I can value centeredness and love and appreciation. It's missed in the world today. It really is.
Yeah. Love on people more.
Yeah.
I think that's a good spot to finish it.
Yeah. That's a good one.